Hello everyone, welcome to day 2 of Certified Kubernetes Administrator 2025 course. The agenda for today is how do we install Docker. Then we'll explore Docker Hub and understand how images are managed. We'll build our first Dockerfile to create a custom Docker image. We'll push this image to Docker Hub, which is our Docker registry of choice. So it is accessible anywhere. Finally, we'll run a container from image that we just created. Now let's go to our browser and go to docs.docker.com. This is a site where we can download Docker desktop. So we'll click on get Docker. Here we see that Docker desktop is available for Mac, Windows and Linux. It requires 4 GB of RAM, but you would at least need 8 GB for everything else in your laptop to function properly. For example, you would have a browser where you're watching me. You would also have your applications open. For all that to work seamlessly, you would need 8 to 12 GB of RAM and 4 CPUs shall suffice. In case your laptop doesn't have this configuration, or you do not have to go laptop shopping, although we all love that, what you can do is you can spin up a virtual machine in Azure or Google, who provides you with service credits. Those service credits will help you in your learning journey of Docker, Kubernetes and maybe cloud as well. You can spin up an Ubuntu VM in your preferred cloud provider. Once you do that, you can check the installation steps on how to install Docker on Ubuntu. You can click here in the first official link, and here it tells you how to install Docker on Ubuntu. Just follow these steps exactly and you would be good to go. When I was learning Docker and Kubernetes, I used this process itself. The Docker desktop, if you have a personal laptop, is good to have. Otherwise, Docker engine installed onto a cloud VM would also suffice. Just so you know, there are also ways you can install Docker desktop onto your cloud VM. You can search the web. You will get multiple blogs and YouTube videos showing you how to do that. Once the installation is done, you can go to your terminal window and you can run docker -- version to verify that Docker is indeed installed. Long format of this command is docker version, which will give you a detailed output of different components and their versions. You can use either of them. Once you have done this, then you will go to your Docker desktop. This is the kind of window that you will see. Here what I have done is you will see a sign in button here. I have logged in into my personal cloud with Varjosh account. How you do it is, first we'll go to Docker Hub. Docker Hub is the Docker registry that we'll be using in this course. So I'll go to hub.docker.com. The first thing you can do is you can sign up here. It's a 1-minute process. Once you have logged in into your Docker Hub account, use the same login to sign into your Docker desktop as well. Once these two things are done, what we learned in the beginning was there is a Docker registry, and Docker registry contains multiple images, but there is also a layer in between. That layer is called repository. What happens is Docker registry is a collection of repositories. Repositories are collection of Docker images. Now how this works is, for example, if I search for Ubuntu here, Ubuntu is a Docker repository. This repository has multiple similar images. Why I say similar? Because each image has a different version. Versions are tags. This Ubuntu repository has Ubuntu with this version, and so on. There are plethora of versions at your disposal. So whatever you want to use, you can use it. If you run docker pull Ubuntu, it will pull the latest image. If you buy the tag that they have specified here, then you can pull a specific version. So for now, we'll only pull Ubuntu, which will pull the latest image for us. Now what I'll do is I'll go to my Visual Studio Code. I have opened the code's GitHub repo, whose link you can find in the description. I'll right click on day 2 and I'll open an integrated terminal. Now this opens the location of of this file on my machine. I am here. If I do ls, I don't see any files here. What I will do now is I'll click on docker --help. This command will show me all the available commands at my disposal. The good thing about this is it will also give you common commands. These commands are which are used mostly. We have already used a version command, if you remember. Now we'll use docker pull command. So if you see here, pull command is used to download images, push command is used to push images, and images command is used to list images. In this demo lesson, we'll see all these 5 commands. We'll also see ps, which is used to list the containers. We'll also use run command to run the container. Now let's dive in again. What I'll do is I'll write docker pull Ubuntu. Once I write this, we already know this will pull the latest image of Ubuntu, but it also adds a few more things in the command. If I go to my diagram here, when you write docker pull Ubuntu, the Docker daemon itself performs these actions. First one is it will add a docker.io. Docker.io is the default registry, the Docker Hub registry. Library is the default namespace for official images. Then you have Ubuntu, and latest tag is associated if you do not provide a tag while downloading an image. Here, this is used when you are using Docker Hub, but if you are using AWS, GCP or Nexus or any other platform, then they would have their own mechanism to pull an image. For example, if I go to AWS, you will have to provide the repository URI and then the tag. Here is how it looks like. If you go to GCP, then you will have to have gcr.io, project ID, and then image name and the tag. This is how you will do the pull and push when it comes to other cloud platforms or other Docker registries. Now let's go back to our terminal again. If I run Docker images now, I'll see that Ubuntu image is available here. Ignore this image, I created this before, so let's remove this image. I'll write docker rmi my first image to remove this. I'll also add a -f, that is for force. I'll clear this. I'll write docker images. We'll see that Ubuntu image is there. So like we discussed before, Ubuntu is under a repository. It is not listed as image. That repository has an image called Ubuntu with the latest tag, which is what we are using. There is an image ID associated with it. There is a created. So created shows that this Ubuntu image was created 5 weeks ago. Size of this image is 101 MBs. Now what we'll do is we'll write a short Docker file like we discussed in day 1's lecture. The first step was to write a Docker file. We'll write a Docker file. We'll copy the content here. We'll go to our Visual Studio Code. We'll go to day 2. I'll right click here. I'll click on new file. I'll name this file Dockerfile and D is uppercase here, and I'll paste this here. The from here tells Docker daemon that the base image that you must use for this is Ubuntu and use the latest Ubuntu image. Then it tells the command that you must run in the container is hello docker. We'll again go back to the diagram and see we use the command docker build to create an image. So what I'll do is I'll simply write docker build. I'll write -t to provide the name to my image. The name of my image will be my first image, and I'll write a dot here. Dot signifies that the Docker file for the image that I'm creating resides in the current directory. So in day 2 folder, we have our Docker file. So I'll press enter now. This has created my image. So if I write Docker images now, I'll see my first image and Ubuntu here. But a thing to notice is the created timestamp for my first image is still 5 weeks ago. Why is this? When you are using simpler arguments like CMD, another one is entry point. These two arguments only update the metadata of the image. They do not write a new layer onto the image. So what happens is, if I talk about the image creation process, the base layer would be Ubuntu. On top of that, you will have your command. and on top of that anything else that you are running. So this is how it works. But when you talk about CMD is not considered as a layer. So CMD just updates the meta data of the image. It is not a layer. So the image that we created has the timestamp of 5 weeks ago. Now let's do one thing. Let's add another argument. That argument is called run, and run as well we'll write echo I will create a new layer. Once I'll save this file. So I have auto saved enabled, so you can also enable it from here. When I perform a docker build using this, docker build -t my second image, for example, and then I'll write dot to use the current directory. And when I now click enter and then I run docker images, you see that now I have the timestamp of 4 seconds ago. So the run here creates a layer which modifies this custom image to say that, oh yes, I was created just 4 seconds ago. How do I deep dive into this? What you can run is, you can run docker history and name of the image, my first image. It will tell you how the things were performed. If you write my second image, this will tell you which layers were added. It shows that this layer was added. If you want to deep dive further, then what you can use is docker inspect my first image. It will show you all the things associated with your image. Now I'll clear my screen. Now what we'll do is, right now we have our image which we'll use. We'll use my first image. What I'll do is I'll docker RMI, which is used to remove an image. I'll remove my second image, and I'll also remove this line from here. And then when I write docker images, I only see the Ubuntu image and my first image. What we will now do is, we have to push this image to our Docker registry. But before we do that, let's first run a container. So I'll simply write docker run my first image. I'll press enter. The container ran. It says hello docker. Now what I can do is, I can write docker ps to list down all the containers that are running. But what? It says that there are no containers. Why didn't it list any containers? So let's do one thing. Let's run docker ps -a. What -a will do is, -a stands for all. It will show you all the containers, whether they are running or they are in stopped state or they have exited. So I'll click on docker ps -a. Now I see my container, but the status is exited. Now this brings me to another concept when it comes to containers. Containers will only run till the time they are doing something. And once they have done what they are supposed to do, they will exit. For example, our Ubuntu container was just supposed to say hello docker, and once it did that, it exited. So this behavior is expected. Now let's clear our screen. Let's type docker images. Now we see we have our my first image here. This is fine. I want to push this image to Docker Hub. If I go to Docker Hub and click on repositories, I see there are no repositories available for me because I have not pushed anything. I have not created a repository yet. But can I push an image by just typing this? If I write docker push my first image, will this work? This won't work because I have not supplied in which account do I want to push this image, correct? So what I'll do is I'll also add cloud with Varjosh here. Ideally I should add this, and then I'll also write a tag for this image. Let's say this is v1. Now will this work? This will not work because right now I do not have an image that is named like this. So in Docker, what you do is you name the image in such a way that you can directly push that. For example, what now I'll do is I'll write Docker tag. I'll write the present name, my first image, and the new name for this image would be cloud with Varjosh / my first image colon the version tag, which we have been using latest since the beginning. Now we are giving a version to this. It is important that your developers name your images correctly because these versions are the identifiers. These tags are the identifiers. What I can do is I can write Docker push okay. It's so you see now it says that the tag does not exist. So this image does not exist here. We do not have a latest image that has this name. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to also write the tag here, v1. Now it is preparing. Now this was the size of the image and it has published the image to, you see this? You have this image, you click here, you can go to tags here, you see that there is a single tag v1 that we just pushed. Let's quickly see few more things. If I write Docker images now, I see the image that is tagged v1 and with my username. Another thing to notice, it didn't ask for any credentials. Why is that? Because right now the context, the authentication that it is using, it is of Docker desktop. I've already logged in here. It is using this. How do I verify that? I can do cat on, there is a file in your home directory in .docker which is called config.json. Config.json. You can go to this file and see that it is right now the context is desktop Linux. In case you have installed Docker in your Ubuntu virtual machine in a cloud provider, then what you can do is you can cat this and you won't see anything here. So what you will have to do is you will have to use this command, docker login -- username. Here you will provide your username and then password std in. Once you hit enter, it will ask you to enter the password. That is how you will log in into your Docker Hub registry. Let's clear the screen. Now I'll write docker --help. What we have seen today is we have seen the docker run command to run a container. We have seen docker ps to list the running containers. If you use it with -8, will also show you the stopped or exited containers. We have seen the build command, which is used to build a Docker image from Dockerfile. We have seen a pull image, which is used to pull image from a registry. We have pushed the image to a registry, and we have also seen images command to list the images. Version is also seen, and you can also use Docker info. Docker info will show you the characteristics of your Docker installation. Docker info, it will show you everything. You can also use this command. Another thing I want to show you is what we did was we used Docker push. We just wrote this. We could have also written docker.io here. Docker.io. The Docker daemon appends docker.io automatically. You don't have to write this, but this is what Docker does behind the scenes. It's one and the same thing. The complete format for the push command will be, if I show that to you, it will be this. And how can you interpret this is docker push docker.io, then you have your username, and then you have your image name, and then a tag. In today's lecture, we have discussed how do we install Docker. We explored Docker Hub for a little while. Then we created a very small Docker file. Then we created an image from that Docker file, and then we pushed that image to Docker Hub. Finally, we ran a container from that image. I'll see you in the next lecture. Thank you very much for watching.